We're not taught that. And so I love that your language around speaking about the medicines involves the somatic piece because I spend most of my time helping people in integration. And quite often, the biggest piece that's missing is connection to the body. We can't think our way to a calmer nervous system. It doesn't work. And so if the body is in a state of trauma, like we need to have tools to calm that down in order to integrate these magical experiences. Otherwise, we're just stuck in our heads. So the somatic piece is essential to integration, and it's often missing in so many of the modalities because we love being in our heads.
Or it's like I see it here. I came to Peru thinking, oh, everyone here's going to get it. They're going to know exactly how to, all this sort of somatics. They're just going to get it because they've drank so much plant medicine. And like he was like, no, there's plenty of them that don't. They're still very in their head. You know, they got some people are very good at opening up, you know, into the astral or into this, you know, beautiful, you know, visual states, but they have trouble like just being here when they're out of that place. Or even people get into meditation, and there's this whole thing of closing your eyes and meditate. People get very good at doing that, but then bringing that into their day-to-day life as they're moving through working and dishes and whatever else. It's because this is what happened to me. I'd meditate for a long time, and it's like I could be all calm if I'm meditating, but the rest of the time I was so disconnected from certain emotions because I just take a deep breath and I breathe through it and it's gone, and it's like, oh no, I'm not angry, that kind of a thing, you know.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's kind of it's a syndrome. And I think in our Western world to be disconnected from our emotions and our bodies and ultimately from nature. And this is why I love plant medicines as a modality of healing, because that fundamental wound of being disconnected from our homes in the small sense, our bodies, and in a big sense, you know, the earth, like, and all the psychosis that comes from that. You know, the pain of separation, of thinking we're all alone, of like all the stories that comes with that. It's fundamental to our suffering. So we have to like reconnect basically to begin the journey of healing, or it stays mental, and that's not the happy place.
Yeah. It's a really funny thing. Like when I started the somatic stuff, like I never knew, like people would say, be in your body, stop overthinking everything. It's like, oh, I guess, like, oh, I'll try not to think of something. But then realizing that there's certain ways of using awareness, and I want to ask you about how you do it in a sec, but there's a specific feeling that happens when it's like whatever we are, consciousness lands in the body. There's this, like the embodied feeling. I don't know what to call it. I don't think anyone's come up with a good name for it yet, because it's not just like a silent mind. It's more than that. It's this embodied presence. I'm here in my body. It's different to everything else. Like no one, you read like self-help books. I keep trying these things because I've used to read this stuff in the past. I'll read a few chapters. I'm like, this is so old school. Like I'm just going to journal. I'm going to analyze, and I'm going to even think about what I'm grateful for. The tools, but if it's not about getting into the body, it's missing the point.
I've actually reframed the idea of psychedelic integration into psychedelic embodiment. Because, and I'll be totally honest with you, that the relationship with my body has been the most difficult relationship in my life. So I have learned sort of the hard way. I mean, I spent years doing psychedelic work, trying to do it all in my head. Trust me, if it was possible, I would have figured it out. And it's when I really finally said, my God, it's this relationship with my physical home that needs to shift, where, like you described, everything started coming like online. It just, all of the wisdom that I held mentally literally got to permeate into the cells of my body, where I'm walking in it, not just thinking it. So I no longer even really call it integration. It's embodiment. Like we've got to bring it into the physical.
I'm getting goosebumps, truth bumps. So it reminds me of like when we talked like a couple years ago. It was like that big, you know, the personality dissolves kind of experience. I think a lot of people have it at different stages. But then the problem is that it's almost like it's there, it's waiting to land. It's almost like there's this traffic jam up from, you know, we could say up, I don't know where exactly it comes from, but it's like it's trying to come down in, but if I'm in their head, it blocks that process. So kind of like what you're talking about, it says we get the mind out of the way, all these beautiful things, beautiful insights that people can have with psychedelics, they start to come down and become part of our day-to-day life instead of just being this thing we do in ceremony.
Exactly. And so whatever modality we use to be embodied is beautiful. There's a million of them. It kind of doesn't matter which one we choose. It matters if it works. And that we start to, I mean, for me, it's like when I'm doing any of my practices, I need to feel my toes first and foremost. Is my energy, my consciousness all the way down into my body? Because I used to stub my toes and trip all the time because I was so disembodied, you know? So it's so simple. These things are deceptively simple. That, and because the mind is the place where it likes to make things very complicated and oh, there's all these steps to it. Like, no, it's just finding a way where we feel consciously connected to ideally all the parts of our body, you know, and our organs, and to hear the communications that's happening on the level of body consciousness. But you know, first it's like just anchoring in, and yoga. Well, for me, it's nature. When I go out and plant my butt on the ground and I have my back against a tree and I'm like really connected to tangible earth, that's where it's like abundantly obvious my connection to my body. It all comes together. But everybody's different in terms of where they get that aha moment. We've got to figure it out.
Interesting. So you think, so for you, if you want to connect like that, your go-to thing is to sit outside, lean against the tree, sit on the ground.
Yep.
That's the number one thing that you do. Barefoot?
Yes. Yes. And ideally, like connecting as much of my skin to the sun as well. Like I love working with core shamanism, the elements. I'm always working with air and fire and earth and water, like, because that's what makes up everything. So yeah, like spending time to connect with those four elements and know that that's what my body's made of. It's, yeah, it's not mental. It's pretty simple.
Yeah. Well, it's, you know, because I think some people might hear this and go, okay, I'm just going to go sit down on a tree, by a tree, but they might go sit by a tree and read a book, or they sit by the tree and think about all the stuff they want to think about, their work or whatever. But because this embodiment thing is about sitting down, actually feeling the tree, being present with the sensations of how does a tree feel against you? Can you feel it like wobbling? Can you feel your feet on the ground? Can you feel the heat of the sun? It's tuning into the sensations, not thinking about stuff while you're doing it, right?
Or if you are thinking, having as much of your awareness in the sensations of the senses that you're naming. What does the wind feel like on your skin? What are the whispers that the wind is speaking? How does that, just using our senses, because that's connected to our body. And that's my portal into all of this, is sense of smell. What do I see? What do I feel on my skin? And before I know it, I feel completely conscious and connected to my body. And if my mind's going, that's okay. Whatever. I don't have to pay attention to it.
Yeah, well, it's kind of funny with the mind, where it's like it's only your mind that tries to get rid of the mind. At some point, it's like people realize, or you realize, I've realized, it's like I don't need to get rid of it. If I'm just here feeling, doing what you're talking about, the mind tends to fade gently on its own. But the more I try and get rid of it, this is a classic meditation thing too. They teach you this, but it's different when it becomes, oh, now I understand. Now I know what they mean.
Yeah, it's like the symbol of the serpent eating its tail, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like the mind trying to tell the mind to shut up. That's not going anywhere. So that's why ayahuasca's taught me this, is to learn to place my awareness. I focus on my heart. I'll imagine that my heart has nostrils. I'm breathing through it. And after a time, more of my awareness and consciousness is connected with that space. And if my mind is rattling off a to-do list or whatever, it doesn't matter. It's just background noise.